The dictator of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, commented on rumors that Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stopped appearing at official Kremlin events because he had fallen out of favor with the president.
He hasn't fallen out of favor at all. Well, he has his own work schedule. He reported to me, told me what he would be doing and when. That's exactly what he's doing, preparing for a meeting with the American partners.
But the facts tell a different story. The Financial Times reported that the US cancelled the Trump-Putin meeting in Budapest, in part after Rubio's conversation with Lavrov. According to sources cited by the Financial Times, after the conversation, Rubio told Trump that Moscow was not showing readiness for negotiations, and the US president was not impressed by Russia's position. Lavrov was named the main culprit. It was he whom the Western press called the primary factor in the cooling of relations with the US. Several media outlets reported that Lavrov came to the meeting with Secretary of State Marco Rubio unprepared, refused to engage in discussion, and took an excessively hard line on Ukraine, trying to follow the Kremlin's instructions to the letter. According to the Telegram channel Nexta, insiders say that Lavrov received a severe reprimand from Putin. The head of the Russian Foreign Ministry was almost accused of sabotage, since under no circumstances was he supposed to disrupt the summit. On November 27th, it became known that for the first time since 2022, Lavrov would not attend the meeting of OSCE foreign ministers. He will be replaced by Deputy Minister Alexander Grushko. Previously, the Russian foreign minister had missed a number of important meetings and events. Moreover, Lavrov lost his status as the head of the Russian delegation at the G20 summit.
Of conversations between the U.S. President's special representative Steve Witkoff and Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov has been discussed by global media for several days now. But at the same time, the question remains as to who actually provided journalists with the transcript or even the recordings of these conversations. One of the theories is that it's a struggle between the so-called Kremlin towers. So could the confrontation there really escalate that much? Anna Brikova reports on all of this.
It's impossible to listen to.
That's how the Kremlin leader commented on the leak of conversations between Trump's special representative Votkov and his own aide, Ushakov. Dmitriev immediately called it fake, but Ushakov did not. Yet who exactly was eavesdropping and provided the transcripts or even the recordings to journalists is still an open question.
The first basic version, the Russians. Could it have been them? Well, as a version, as a theory, yes. But on the other hand, the Russians completely destroyed their best ally, their most loyal ally in the circle of the American president, Votkov.
Other versions include Western intelligence services, American, European, and even Ukrainian. If we're talking about the Russian ones,
wiretapping Putin's aide without Putin's sanction is simply unreal. It's just setting yourself up.
So, the leak could have been orchestrated if it really did happen with the Kremlin master's permission. Or perhaps he didn't object in order to cast a shadow over the negotiation track regarding a potential plan to resolve the war between Russia and Ukraine. And this could have been pulled off by the so-called hawks.
The so-called grandpas, pensioners who are now making the most money from the Russian military-industrial complex and who want the war to continue. Representatives of this cohort. The most prominent representatives are Lavrov, Patrushev, and Medvedev, who is trying to act in this direction. Of course, actually, Rybkov and many other individuals.
In order to cast a shadow over Dmitri's circle of influence, who is increasingly involved in contacts with the Americans. Moreover, there was recently information that the so-called Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sergei Lavrov, fell out of favor because of the failed meeting between Putin and Trump in Budapest. Dmitriev immediately went to the US at that time, supposedly to save the situation. And Lavrov temporarily disappeared from the public eye. He wasn't even present at the Federation Council Security Council meeting and did not lead the Russian delegation at the Group of 20 summit. It's clear?
That, and the strengthening of Dmitriev's position, who by and large did not play any decisive role, is a direct slap in the face to Lavrov. Everyone understands this perfectly well. And Lavrov understands this perfectly well too. And they're showing Lavrov that, look, no one is irreplaceable.
This is still a practice from the Stalinist regime, pitting close associates against each other so they don't get too comfortable. Moreover, there are likely real contradictions between Lavrov and Dmitriev. And it is Putin who can use this to his own advantage.
If Putin were dissatisfied with either Lavrov or Dmitriev, he would have gotten rid of one of them, or even both, without the slightest problem. But both Lavrov and Dmitriev clearly suit him just fine.
After all, Lavrov mostly makes official statements, not flexible ones, but rather clearly declares the Kremlin's position. Dmitriev, on the other hand, tries to talk the Americans into things, keeping them on the hook both regarding the negotiation track and the potential restoration of relations between the countries, especially when it comes to business. There is
a fundamental difference in understanding how to proceed further. There are indeed so-called systemic liberals who now fully realize that the Russian economy is currently collapsing. They are actually working diligently to save the struggling Russian economy. And those influential hawks that exist, they view the complex situation more from a profound historical and geopolitical perspective. They deeply desire a real and significant geopolitical revanche, a complete reversal of fortunes.
And Putin brings out representatives from one group of influence or another, depending on the moment and his own interests. While the situation with the leaked conversation between Vitkov and Ushakov is still making headlines, the Kremlin leader is already openly denying that Lavrov is out of favor. What's more,
he is preparing for a meeting with the American partners, which
once again shows that both Lavrov, Dmitriev and Ushakov are figures from the same deck. From Putin's deck, they can compete with each other for loyalty, but not without the Tsar's approval. And the question of who exactly organized the information leak, Russians or other intelligence services, remains unanswered for now. Because the Russians could have disrupted the negotiations in another way. Anna Brikova, We Are Ukraine, Marathon United News.
By the way, you noticed, right, that Sergei Lavrov was once again absent at the meeting with Tokayev. So what, have they finally sidelined and thrown out Sergei Viktorovich? Has Lavrov disappeared? Where has the dark horse of Russian diplomacy gone? It seems Lavrov is in serious trouble. After the failed meeting between Putin and Trump, the head of the Russian Foreign Ministry, it seems, has fallen out of favor. Yes, of course, out of favor. And now Lavrov is practically begging just for Trump and Putin to meet. Even Peskov has joined in this lament now. They're already whining in unison over there. The Kremlin is begging Washington for mercy. Following Lavrov, Peskov also rushed to beg the US to return to negotiations. In an interview with CNN, Putin's aide at one point couldn't hold back and revealed everything.
And we're losing time, losing money, losing profit. And
here's what's telling. At the White House, this lamentation wasn't particularly appreciated. Well, in short, they sent them packing. And Lavrov was sent packing in Washington too. And Peskov and all Russians as well. In response to Putin's representatives' pleas to resume negotiations, Secretary of State Marco Rubio made it clear that Russia needs to change its tone and curb its ambitions. Then Lavrov actually understands that he could really end up behind bars. Literally. Well, that's Russia for you. And right away, he started having his usual autumn flare-up. There's no other way to put it.
Putin also considers Zelensky a Nazi. Well, yeah. And where's the evidence to the contrary? When Zelensky regularly appears on TV, handing out awards to Azov fighters and other Nazi battalions with patches of Nazi Germany on their sleeves. So how else are we supposed to treat this person? Oh.
Call the orderlies. The Kremlin court jester, well, I mean the fool, has really lost it now. And he's even in the West now. He's becoming persona non grata in Italy.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov gave an interview to the Italian newspaper Corriere della Sera. However, after preparing the material, the editorial board decided not to publish it.
It's about time. How much longer do we have to listen to these war criminals?
There is talk in Moscow about the resignation of Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. He ignored a nuclear meeting with Putin, which sparked a wave of panic and rumors in the Russian capital. It was so intense that the Kremlin had to publicly comment on the situation, according to CNN. Thus, on October 7th, the press secretary of dictator Vladimir Putin, Dmitry Peskov, assured journalists that Lavrov, of course, continues to serve as foreign minister and called reports of his possible resignation false.
there is not a single grain of truth in these reports.
The initial cause of the rumors about Lavrov's resignation was a Financial Times publication stating that the stance of Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov during his brief meeting and last phone conversation with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was so uncompromising and unyielding that it surprised Washington and led to the cancellation of the summit between Trump and Putin, and the absence of the chief diplomat at the Security Council meeting when Putin was discussing the prospect of resuming full-scale nuclear tests only added fuel to the fire. The spokesperson for the Russian Foreign Ministry, Maria Zakharova, confirmed Lavrov's absence from the meeting with Putin, but assured that this happens, and also began to deny rumors about Lavrov's resignation.
Well, you knew what to ask about, of course. That's a fantastic story. Yes.
According to propaganda media, Lavrov was absent by prior agreement, but this very fact drew the attention of observers since he became the only permanent member of the council to miss the meeting. Suspicions grew after it became known that Lavrov would not head the Russian delegation at the G20 summit in Johannesburg. Analysts immediately began talking about possible disagreements between Lavrov and the Kremlin. But official Moscow insists that everything is under control.